except for our own here in
That's
Arizona.
Right. Yeah, when I say it's hot here, you have a whole different world.
We have blow dryer status.
That's right. Yeah, just incredible. We are actually, in theory, supposed to get some rain from a hurricane that's going to be coming onto the coast. The good news is it's a rain-filled storm, and the other good news is it's not going to be strong enough to hurt anything. So that would be a win-win.
Let me know how that goes.
Please.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think we're all here. Let's do it. It is time.
Excellent.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another Pragmatic Institute Ask Me Anything session. We are so glad to have you here with us. A reminder, if you can, turn your cameras on. We love to see your faces. It just makes it so much more personal to be talking to real people. And then, of course, this is an Ask Me Anything. So we have some pre-submitted questions already, but if you are here and you have a question, feel free. You can either post that in the chat published to everybody, if you like, or you can address it in the chat just to myself, Eddie Gordon. Either way, I will keep an eye on the chat and toss those over to our instructor as we get them. And before we begin, just a quick plug, of course, for the Pragmatic alumni community. We're so proud of it. Brand new online community for Pragmatic alumni. I often make up a pitch about it, but we've got some quotes coming in from some folks who are already in there. How about this one from Director of Product and Development Ops at Ultimate Software, who said, "It's a thriving community ready to help each other and offer perspectives and advice, as well as access to the many experts at Pragmatic Institute. It provides you with an alternate sounding board and a place to get ideas from many product people across all industries." What an incredible resource that is. So check out more information about the Pragmatic alumni community at pragmaticinstitute.com/community. You will be glad you did. And now it is, of course, my pleasure to introduce the lady with a special place in my heart. She will always be my first instructor since I joined Pragmatic Institute. It is Diane Pearson, Pragmatic Instructor Extraordinaire. How are you, Diane?
Hi, doing great, Eddie. How are you doing? How are you doing, Callie?
It's Friday. That's 10 times better by default, right?
Also true. Yes, we are here. We're going to talk product, and it's Friday. That's just wonderful. Can't get any better than that.
Well, as I said, we've got a good handful of questions to kick us off here right away. Some good submissions today. We were just kind of glancing through them. Some good topics coming up, some folks that are in some sticky situations that I'm sure Diane can help with. But of course, don't be shy. Our audience, post your questions in the chat and I will toss them over to Diane. But how about to begin with, Diane, I'm going to throw you this question from Jennifer, who says, with change being so hyper-dynamic, how does one go about creating a product roadmap and plan its evolution?
Well, if that's not a topical question, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
You know, there is a Chinese curse that says, may you live in interesting times. And what I will say about this, though, is while it's been painful and there's so many negatives to it, we can take so many positives out of it. And one of them is we've had an opportunity to experience all at once, all of us, this massive change in our expectations and our ability to serve our own markets. And so personally, there's been this massive upheaval, professionally as well. And so this, in my own experience, my own lifetime, and most of the history I can think of that's in any way recent, to have this global unified experience that was so speedily upon us and so significant and so universal. I mean, it's unheard of. What it has done for us as product teams is it's brought to light, do we know how to listen to our markets or don't we know how to listen to our markets? And I think that those of us who were listening to our markets, if we were listening to the whole market, some of us started to see this coming and started talking about it earlier than others. Some of us reacted really well to it. Some of us were We're caught unawares, completely unawares. And there's this other saying that says that weak companies in times of great stress and crisis will fail. Good companies might survive, but strong companies will actually excel during times of crisis. And I think that product teams are like that too. I think what it tells us about answering the question, how do we manage our roadmap? Now that basically you might as well look at all our roadmaps and say, roadmap out the window. First of all, I'd like to say that if we're listening to our markets, if we heard this, if we know our markets, we're in a better position to attack something like this. We're in a better position when the world literally just changes to attack it. If we haven't, what can we do? We do have to get out into the market, but they're too busy to talk to us right now. I suspect that's what a lot of you are hearing. I know that that's something that a lot of people are telling me they're hearing. I would love to go talk to them now to find out what this is going to mean to us and how we can pivot, but they don't have time to talk to us. We might have to, first of all, in order to build a roadmap, we're going to have to talk to the market without actually asking our customers, without actually talking to them. So how can we do that? We're going to have to look at the way they're behaving. Has the way they're using our existing products changed? Has the way they're communicating with each other changed? So go read what they read. Get on their blogs, on their association websites. Listen to what they're saying to each other, because chances are they're not going to spend a lot of time talking to us right now, the time when we most need to hear from them. So it's tough. The second thing is, if you haven't done this before, if you've taken pragmatic classes, you've probably heard specifically in focus class that we talk about the difference between a roadmap and a release plan. The release plan shouldn't change. There was value for that. Ordinarily, in ordinary times, I would say your release plan should be locked down. Your roadmap, on the other hand, should be the statement of direction. It will change. Things will come in and out of it. But if you've started building something, you shouldn't stop. In the world of COVID-19, I would say, nope, not right now. Now you've got to look at that release plan, things that you might already be building. Take a moment and stop after you've done this research and after you've looked around in the market and say, okay, based on what we know now, what are our bets about what's going to change? And they're going to be bets because we've never seen anything like this before. But if you've got some market data, it's an educated bet. It's not us doing this inside out. But you are going to have to look at not only your roadmap, but also your release plan, which this is the first time I've ever said it's going to be time to look at your release plan. The other thing I will tell you, though, is you know your customers. And when you think about communicating with them, you know your market. Communicate based on what's important to them and what's meaningful for them. When this all started to happen, I have a story that I've been sharing in other presentations. We used to fly a lot. All of the instructors did. We were always traveling. And so needless to say, we have pretty high status on at least one airline, usually two or more. As everybody stopped traveling, I received 2 emails from the air carriers that I travel on most. And one of them has a very good reputation, and one of them, frankly, doesn't have that good a reputation for listening to their customers and doing things for their customers. The first one I got said to me, we want to let you know that we value you as a customer, but we know that you're not traveling right now. Don't worry. Your 2019 status, which of course was very, very high on this particular airline, we are going to carry that through no matter how much you do or do not travel in the year 2020. You will have the same status in 2021. Now, that was exactly what I wanted to hear. I know we're going to get back on the road. Certainly in 2021, there will be some live sessions. We will be in a room again together at some point. Airline B sent me a note that said, we've got big discounts on travel between now and June 1st. And I thought, yeah, wow, great. And you know, it depends on who you are and how you feel about the spread and germs and masks, no masks. But me personally, I thought, you're just trying to kill me. You actually
You're
want
trying
to get
to
me on a
kill
plane
me.
to kill me.
Great impression there. You're
Great
trying to kill
impression.
me.
And I thought, this to me is an example of two companies, one who is not listening and who never really listened, and another one that must have listened all along, at least to some degree, and had really internalized what was going to be my concern. Now, eventually, sadly, like 2 months later, that other airline got with the program, said the same thing.
Yeah.
It's too late.
Mm.
It's
You know,
good, but it's too late.
and
So
speaking of,
yes, this is unprecedented. Listen around your market, even if they don't have time for you. Listen to them talking to each other. Listen to them talking to their market. What are they saying to their markets? What's happening to their businesses? Are their businesses thriving? Some of you have markets where the businesses are thriving. Others, you have markets where their business is gone. How can you work with them? And yes, this may require pivots. Be sensitive and sensible. Keep listening because it's going to keep changing. It was a great
speaking of
question.
listening to your markets, Alika sent a note to me in the chat that just said a suggestion. How about forming a client strategic advisory panel? Tell Diana, is right now in the middle of the pandemic an opportune time to form a panel like that, or should we just hope that we already had one?
It depends on who you are in your market. If you are somebody in your market that offers something that people aren't buying that much of right now, I wouldn't necessarily do that first. I would listen around your market. They might not be ready, they might not have time. But if you are somebody who they are turning to lead, oh, absolutely. You should be listening more than ever before. It just depends on what your relationship is with your market. If you are, for example, a provider of masks, if you are a provider of health information, software, sciences, materials, tools, yes, you should expand your direct listening programs with additional customer advisory groups. You may have them with users right now. Start talking to the people who are the legal counsel for those companies, the CEOs. They might be very ready to talk to you when they didn't want to before. If your product, though, is a secondary type product, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but they might not be able to talk to you that much right now. So don't be daunted by that. Give it a try. Never hesitate to try to set one up. But if you're not getting a lot of traction, say, okay, they don't want to talk to us directly right now for whatever reason, but we need to hear what's going on in their world. How can we listen around them? What associations are they listening to? How are they talking to their own customers? What does their marketing look like? What does their press look like? So even if you can't do it, there are ways to listen around it. But I would say it has a lot to do with what you provide to them more than what you'd like to hear from them at this point.
I imagine if your brand X airline had a customer advisory board of any kind, they probably would not have sent out the email saying, now's a great time to buy.
Honestly wonder who thought that was a good idea. To me, it just did manifest the fundamental lack of listening that this particular airline has done forever. And I keep, as instructors, obviously we love doing this. One of the reasons we love it is because we love sharing what we hear from all of you. And I think, boy, if you could hear what people are saying, but
right.
Obviously you don't care that much or you wouldn't have put this out there.
I'm gonna pivot you over to this one. This was another question that I really liked the tone of. I don't have a name for this submitter, but it goes like this. I love the creativity side of creating product, but when getting user feedback from customers, how can you take that information, but also continue to apply your own creativity in the process? Are we just supposed to be vending machines for what the customers are asking for? Is that all we are?
That is a great question. I love that question because that was something I struggled with early in my career, that the satisfaction early on before I started really listening to my markets, the satisfaction was in building something I thought they would love. It was sort of like buying a gift for somebody I didn't know very well, but I wanted to surprise. And unfortunately, and I'm going to say this, but then I want to add a lot to it. Surprisingly, product and market leadership roles, market strategists, product leaders, it has very little to do with creativity to a point. The first piece of what we do truly should not be creative. It truly should be as dispassionate, as fact-based as possible. And in our society right now, we're seeing so many people questioning everything they read, and in many cases, very justifiably so. But we need to be data junkies, and not just data junkies, but data questioners. I often see things posted where if I click through to the article that referred to it, sometimes that article has been delisted. Sometimes it's from 8 years ago. I'm a data questioner. And so I do think what we need to do is put that creativity to the side for a lot of our job. We should be drawing in this information. Our satisfaction really should come from not being a vending machine, but being somebody who can bring that knowledge together. Believe me, that is a talent in extremely short supply. It's hard to find people who can take themselves out of this equation and listen to a market. I've actually had people who worked for me when I came into leadership roles who would refer to their own markets as our stupid customers. Why don't they just listen to us? And unfortunately, I believe the more creativity we bring to the table, the less patient we are with them and their needs. We need to love these people. We need to listen to them. We need to listen to what they don't say. We need to listen to what's happening around them. And that takes a lot of selflessness. It truly is, if done right and well, I do believe this is a very selfless job. Now, where does our creativity come in? There's creativity about how can we get them to talk to us? That's what we need to be creative about, because let's face it, how many of the surveys you get every day do you actually respond to? How often when you're asked, do you answer? We all want to. I mean, sincerely, I probably want to answer 90% more than I do. And then there's this whole huge amount that I don't even want to deal with. But I don't respond as often as I'd like to. So how else are people going to get information about me? Make sure that you're mining the machine learning that you've got. There's so much you can learn about people's paths through your product, their paths through your website, the way they listen and respond on training calls or customer service calls. Some of the most creative products that I've launched with no money, no budget, just changes in pricing or policy or messaging have been from listening to customer service calls, listening to what's going on in the regulatory area for those people, listening to their competition. It's fascinating because we need to be creative in those areas. There's a lot of room to be creative. Those might not be what we think about though. So I would encourage you to use your creativity in those areas. Find ways to listen, and then find creative ways to communicate inside your company, because we're the ones who are the messengers of the market, which means not only do we have to listen creatively, we have to disseminate that knowledge creatively. We're responsible for making sure that our developers really understand and have empathy for our customers, that our customer service people can understand the context in which they're working. I had a really great conversation with a friend of mine who's a consultant, and she does a lot of work with companies that are building products, medical products, medicines, instruments, tools for use in home care. And one of the things she's been doing recently is she's been going to people's homes and watching how the family reacts to giving children injections of a certain medicine for a certain disease. And she said, you know, in some areas of the world, they have sinks. In other areas of the world, there are no sinks. There is no water handy, certainly no hot water. In some places there is soap, in other places there is not. In order to be able to do home care, you have to know what the home looks like. And so figure out a creative way to get inside their homes. How do we do that? How do we listen? And I thought, that's creativity. And what they're beginning to realize, and I just find this fascinating. Because of her, I follow some things I wouldn't ordinarily follow in the medical world. It's fascinating how delivery of medications, how telemedicine, one of the other things, that has just gone crazy since COVID. Boy, you talk about how our world's going to be different. It's going to be different because of telemedicine. But just how they're administering medications, it's amazing. And so figure out ways that you can creatively listen to your market and then disseminate that information inside your own company. How can you share that?
As you're talking about observing the customer to gain feedback, that to me is a moment where what some might consider a more traditional creativity can come into play, because it's in the moments when you are solving problems that the customer didn't even know they had, right? That's the moment where you come up with this brilliant solution that hasn't existed in the world before, that solves an absolute problem, but they didn't know to ask for it. They couldn't tell you exactly, do this for me so that it solves this problem, because they didn't know they had it. But when you come up with a solution and suddenly it improves their quality of life, that is, to me, the very definition of creativity. And it's probably one of the most exciting moments in product design, when you're able to accomplish something like that. It's what the questioner was talking about. But yeah, we can still do that.
Absolutely. And that's where the rush should come from. It's them pulling this product out of your hands because they're so excited. I never knew I needed this, but now I can't live without it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's so rewarding. And if you're really listening creatively, which means, as Eddie says, observing as well as just listening and looking at the environment, it just is amazing what you can end up with.
How about this one from Lawrence, Diane, who says, I'm curious around tips for newer PMs to get that mentorship we so desperately want and need, and how do we best avoid blunders within the zone of incompetence?
Whoa!
The zone of incompetence. Maybe give us your best idea about what the zone of incompetence is, and then tell us how to avoid it, right?
I love that. Thank you, Lawrence. That's a great question. And I'm stealing the zone of incompetence, although I don't want to use that with too many people, but maybe that airline falls in the zone of incompetence.
Uh-oh.
I think that might be our example of the zone of incompetence. So there were two questions there. One of them is, how do I get the mentorship that I need?
Right.
And so let's start with that one. The mentorship that you need, again, with people so busy. Find places where you can, I used to call it run alongside or swim alongside. Where could you be a pilot fish and just glide along and gather knowledge from somebody while they do their thing? If you can't get an official mentor, where can you listen in? And some of those places are certainly going to be with other product team members. So if you know somebody you admire or who's admired in your own company, listen in, shamelessly eavesdrop. What is it they're doing that makes them good? You can even ask other people. So try to do this a little bit passively. Who tends to get projects funded? That's always a good benchmark, because those people are usually very good at framing an opportunity inside a company. Who are those people who seem to know their markets really well? They can talk about their markets, they bring them to life. Listen to what they're, not so much what they're saying, but how they're saying it, where they're saying it, when they're saying it. Those can be the tips you can get from people passively. So I'd say some of it is just about listening in places where you know there might be good information to get. The other one is, it doesn't hurt to ask. I have this week been having some of my fellow instructors sit in with me. I like to sit in on their classes. Now, we don't always have a lot of time, and when we aren't teaching, we like to do other things. But a few days every couple months, it's amazing what you can discover. So if you can, just go to other people's meetings. That's another time when they don't have to make time for you. It's not an official session. You're really seeing them in action. Have them come to your meetings and then thank them later. Getting people to mentor you, one of the things about getting people to mentor you is they want to feel like they made a difference. And so share back what you learned from them. One of the things I learned from watching one of our other instructors the other day is he had this great intro to our foundations class, where he expanded more on a particular point than I usually do in my class. And I told him later, I said, wow, Clark, I'm going to do that from now on. you stop and take a moment to expand on what does inside out really mean, which is a huge concept in our classes for those of you who've taken them, which I assume a lot of you have. He really stopped to talk about that, and he gave an example. And I thought, oh yeah, that's 5 minutes really well spent. So when you hear something, when you're going to use it, thank them and go on. Now, this second piece, how do you avoid the blunders? Oh gosh, I'm not really sure because I made most of the blunders. Sadly, I could tell you a lot more about the blunders I made than avoiding the blunders. I think that one of the biggest blunders we do make, though, is something we talked about in our last question, which is it's not about our creativity, because that tends to be formulated as an opinion. And we know our opinion, although interesting, is irrelevant. So go get data. Take the time to compile the data, prepare the data, and then data talk. Now, I don't mean that you have to say, well, you don't always have to have a survey, but you do have to have interviews, and you do have to be able to say, I've interviewed 10 people about this, and they're in different parts of the country or different parts of the world. The common theme I'm hearing is this: bring data to the table instead of our opinion. And I think that's the number one blunder we make as product teams. It was the number one blunder I made for a long time. When I stopped making it, I will tell you, it changed my career. And I've heard over and over again from students who say, it's amazing how many more projects I'm getting approved, how many times I've been able to shut down the company bully. We did this at a company I worked for, the company before last, before I came to Pragmatic. We had a bully on the sales team. Her name was Harriet. Now, Harriet was a good salesperson. She was an excellent salesperson, but she'd been with the company for 20 years, and she had learned the ways to bully people inside the organization. She wasn't unfortunately, a particularly nice person. And a product director who worked for me, his name was Ken, brilliant guy, has gone on to do great things in product management in many different companies. But he was new to product management, and he was uncertain of his role. And he would back down to Harriet every time. As he started bringing data to these meetings, as he started gathering data from not only inside the organization, from their sources, but also getting his own and aggregating it, and then bringing it to the meetings, we used to call it the cone of knowledge. That's what we called it at this company specifically, the cone of knowledge. He came back from a meeting one day, and his eyes were wide open, and his jaw was just dragging on the floor. He said, I can't believe it. He said, I didn't even have to fight with her this time. She brought off this little puddle of data that she was keeping secret from everybody. And she threw what I used to call a knowledge bomb in the room. And one of the other sales reps said, why wasn't that in the cone of knowledge?
Interesting.
How is Ken supposed to do his job if you're hiding data?
Yeah.
It was massive. It was massive. We had shifted the culture of this organization, and this is a culture of an organization that had been around for 50 years. And this bully was diffused. And our relationship with her changed radically. So the number one cone of incompetence thing is coming in with an opinion when you ought to have data. And it's not really incompetence, it's really just get the data, because data is power. But go get real data. Don't try to weaponize data. Always bring real, sincere data. Always try to gather up all the sources. And if somebody has something you didn't have, don't defend yourself. Just say, great, thank you.
Yeah. A little open source, right?
Open source, absolutely. Data is not a weapon. Data is a tool. Data should be clearing everybody's vision.
Diane, where could PMs look for mentorship if there's no one in their actual company that qualifies as a good mentor?
Shameless plug. I'm going to give a shameless plug.
You know what? It was actually sent to me in the chat, and I tossed it out to you. So go for it. Plug away.
Seriously, network with people like you. So
yes.
Eddie talked right at the beginning today about our Pragmatic alumni community. Now that is a for-fee area, but it's not particularly expensive. Companies often pay for it. It can't hurt to ask, but it is a very vibrant community. So that is a for-fee option. There are lots of for-free options too. I love our pack. Be a member of the pack if you can. If you can't, definitely come to things like this, where you can not only network with me and with Eddie and with Callie, but with everybody else who's here. Oh, and I love the cat. We have a cat. Beth has a cat. Go to product camps. Go online and ask questions. There are so many forums where you can get information. Look at your LinkedIn. Mine your LinkedIn. One of the things I tell people all the time is I am so thankful for my LinkedIn, because I know so many people who are friends of mine from college or high school or early in my career who've done so much better than I have. I don't hesitate to call my friends who are CEOs and CFOs and CMOs and people who know that I held those roles and now hold this role at Pragmatic. They don't hesitate to come to me, and I'm perfectly happy. I've gotten on the phone with them. I chat with them. Don't be shy. All they can say is no.
Yeah. I saw Aaron's cat for a second there too. We've got
Yes,
cat competitions.
Aaron and Beth, we've
Cat
got some
competitions
cats.
going on. There we go.
Oh,
Look, they can make
oh,
friends.
Cute
Cat friends.
Yes. Good to see the cat friends. Yeah, Aaron, that one's going to bite you to death.
Hey, Diane, how about this one from Veronica? I know kind of stood out. Who says, what are some best ways to begin to gain trust within your new product team? I recently took over a team of 8 from someone who left on unfortunate terms. I know their team was fiercely loyal to them, and I want to be able to use my leadership and knowledge to connect and inspire, but be mindful to not rule with an iron fist. This is a broader issue, you know, whether in their product management world or not. If you're coming in and taking over a pre-existing team who loved the leader that's gone, how in the world do you get in with them? How do you form that relationship of trust?
It is an incredibly difficult situation. The last 10 years of my career specifically, and a little bit before that, but the 10 years specifically before I came to Pragmatic, most of what I did was come into organizations that needed something, skills built, upskilling, reorganization, specifically brought in to do that. And a lot of times I came into organizations where there was either a lot of resistance to change, or 2 times specifically, when I heard you say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like my team. I thought of this team right away. It's also funny that you brought this up, because my husband, Tom, and I were talking about this about 2 weeks ago. Tom is at this point doing consulting work, but he was on a lot of teams where the leadership changed a lot. And he always managed being the one they relied on, no matter who this leader was. And I said, so, you know, how did you do this? And how could I help my friend? I had this friend who's dealing with something similar. And what he said about the people on the team was, he said, they want you to ask questions, but they don't want you to ask stupid questions. Just take the varnish off of it. That's exactly what he said. What he said was, don't come in and say, so tell me about your product. Learn as much as you can and get as much detail as you can, and ask questions that you really want the answer to, that isn't challenging to them. Get a deeper dive. Thank them for the information. And also then, be sure you're thanking them in public for that information. Treat them like experts on the things they're experts on. So give to get a little bit. Make sure that you're giving them the respect they deserve. And so that was from his perspective that I actually think is really good and pertinent to this particular question. One of the other things that I know when I came in to these jobs, and I've done this well and I've done this badly. I like to hope that I got better and better and learned from my mistakes, but one of them is, don't necessarily pounce on them with a lot of questions. Go to their meetings and learn a little bit first. Go listen around them a little bit. And I guess I like this listening around. I think I've said it 5 times today, but I like this listening around a little bit. Also, look that love in the face, because if they loved that person, and I've walked into that before, don't bring them in and say, so, I know you really loved your other manager, but do maybe at the end of something casual where you're having a conversation, say, hey, by the way, I know you really loved Eddie, and I heard he was a great guy. Whatever the situation is specifically, I don't know your specific situation, but can you tell me a few things you really liked about his style? the things you really enjoyed about working for him, because I'd love to keep all that positive stuff going. That would be something that would build a bridge to say, hey, I acknowledge that you really loved my predecessor. That's okay. What can I do to help keep some of those cool things going? But yeah, that iron fist thing, you do have to be you. You are going to change things. This guy, they used to plan elaborate hoaxes. They were really cool and funny. And they were worried about doing this with me because, I don't know, I was more quantitative. But we started doing that again when they realized I thought it was really fun and interesting too. But I also did institute a stand-up meeting where if I came out of the executive team meeting and I wanted people to know what happened, I just said, hey, anybody who's here, I'm going to walk out. I'm going to share what I heard. If you're here, you're here. If you're not, you're not. And actually, that was something that some people weren't comfortable with. They actually didn't like it. But I figured, this is, I want to communicate this information. This is a good way to do it. That's how we did it. So stay true to the things you know need to be changed, especially if you know why that person is gone and some things have to change. Once you've built trust, you can actually share a little bit more of that without violating HR issues. That, what, these are things we have to change. And these are the things we want to stay exactly the same.
Right. Here's one in the chat that just came in from Malika, who asks, what are your thoughts on value-based pricing versus cost-based pricing? Malika is scheduled to take the pricing class next week, so there may be a discussion of that there, but is asking because of development for a product manager's workshop that's going on right now. So with the understanding that Aleka will be in the pricing class next week, any tips you can offer to help with the development of that workshop before the class?
Before the class, yes, and with I don't want to pre-teach your whole class. You will love the class. It is a great class, and it helps with so much more than pricing, which is one of the best things about it. But value-based versus cost-based, the fact is, the data shows value-based pricing is more profitable more often. Value-based pricing is the way to go. Cost plus pricing isn't the way to price. Now, I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to leave it to price class to tell you why. But how can you? The second question is naturally, well, unfortunately, cost-based pricing is pretty easy to do because you look at your costs, you add a margin, you're done. How do I value-based price? Especially if this is a really new product. You're going to learn a lot of very specific ways, very specific tools to do that. And you can find even more in the Alumni Resource Center. So if you've taken other classes, which I'm assuming if you're taking price, you have, go to the Alumni Resource Center, look under pricing. There is so much information. But some of the things you can do is you can go out and talk about what problem does this solve for you? This goes back to foundations class. Find out from the market or articulate based on the knowledge you already have, what problem does this solve for them? What's the pain that they're feeling? These are the questions you're going to want answers to in order to be able to price well. So relative to other problems they have, is this a big problem or is this a little problem? Most of us have, if you think about your own home budget, you probably have a budget to solve 5, 10, maybe if you're really lucky, 20 problems a year. Housing, shelter, energy, water, and then hopefully some fun things. If you're going to buy 5 things, if all of a sudden you only have the money to buy 5, which would be the 5 you'd buy? Those are the same kinds of questions you should ask yourself about your products and your markets. If they had to cut down to the bare bones tomorrow, do you stay or do you lose? And I know I've been in situations a lot where I looked at that and said, oh gosh, we would lose. We would definitely lose. Is there a way we can make that more valuable? Just that very understanding though, along that continuum, and then think about, well, how much do they pay for those things that are really important versus how much would they pay for those things that they would get rid of way before they'd get rid of our product? Put yourself on a continuum of value. And then think about what people charge for that. Now, there are going to be all sorts of tools you get in price class that will add to that. But overall, it all comes back to the problem, who has it, who's going to have to pay for it, and how willing they are to pay relative to their whole world. And what is all the problems look like that they solve? So don't price in a vacuum. Price based on what do you think their budget looks like and how do they spend it?
Beautiful. We are coming up to our 45 minutes, but I wanted to throw this one at you, Diane. It sounds like this person has maybe a cultural issue between departments here. They say, my developers run the release schedule, and I was curious how I'm supposed to deliver 100% of something valuable to the market in a situation such as this.
You know, Eddie, that's a really good question, because the developers should run the release schedule. So first of all, but there's more to this, so keep listening. The developers should run the release schedule. Developers actually own the process of building the product. They should, because they're the experts on building. However, and this is a huge change, and we talk about this language difference a lot in class, and specifically in launch class. Releases and launches are two entirely different things. And if they're not in your organization, there are a lot of techniques you can use to make that happen. One of them is just start saying, are you talking about the launch or are you talking about the release?
Yeah, good.
Releases are things we put up on our shelves inside our company. Launches are things we do when we package some of those things together off that shelf and take it to market. That's the first step inside any organization. The really cool thing about this is if you just start using those words differently inside your company, no matter where you are in the organization, at least it's going to stop people and make them think. So even if you're not a leader who can say, okay, from now on, we're doing it this way, you can just say, well, are you talking about the launch or the release? Your leader might say, well, what's the difference? Oh, well, there's a big difference. And you can explain the difference. And then all of a sudden, everybody starts to realize, oh yeah, okay, those are actually different things. Another way you can do this, and my main answer to this is separate launch and release. Let them release however they want to, but start to separate launch and release in your organization. So step one, just start calling them different things. Step two, start giving everybody on the project visibility into the launch plan. Because what often happens, and this is on us a lot of times, project management is managing the release schedule and everybody can see it. They've got sprints, they've got details on what's going to be in the sprint, they've got QA, it's all detailed. It's on a schedule, everybody can see it. And then it's almost like after that release, it falls off a cliff and somehow it gets launched. There's not a lot of visibility into that launch plan. We've got to make sure everybody in the organization and the developers and everybody sees that it's not just about building. There are all these steps in launch that have to happen too, like approvals, like getting stuff to creative. I know that Eddie and Callie do a lot of creative work, and I'd be willing to bet they've worked in companies before where everybody just assumed, hey, release is done, it's launched. It isn't. And so make sure that we've got lots of visibility into that. So if possible, I did this as a leader, you might not be able to do this on your own, but I added to the development schedule, the launch schedule, so that everybody saw everything. And they realized, you know what, if this is 2 weeks late, or somebody decides to throw something into the launch at the last minute, we say, well, okay, that's fine, but we got to send everything back to creative. It's got to come back to you for approval. Then it's got to go to Diane for approval. Then it's got to come back and we got to get it set again with the creative team. People don't think about that because we don't often show it to them. So make sure there's visibility. That's what I would say about that delivering 100% of something valuable to the market. Development is going to put things on the shelf in an efficient way. That's what they're supposed to do. But we got to tease those two things apart. Release is an inside the company thing. Launch is a get it out to the market outside the company thing.
So useful, such an important distinction. You reminded me, Diane, I'll give you a little inside joke here in the design community. When people asked for very, very short turnaround times, we'll joke that, oh, we'll just push the design button on our keyboard. Only designers have it.
Right.
It's a special keyboard just for designers. It says design. You just push it and the whole design just pops out, completely done. It's pretty cool. You should get one.
Yeah, it's
you have to be a designer though.
It just spits it right out. and I know you're going to get back to editing this in 2 flat seconds. I'm going to hit the design button. It's going to come to you. You're just going to drop everything and edit it.
Fully edited.
Yeah.
It jumps up on YouTube, looking beautiful. Diane, our time is up. It goes by in a heartbeat every single time, but these have been fantastic questions and so useful. You know, this itself is a source of mentoring. We were talking about that earlier, and this certainly qualifies for that. It has been so good to have you all here. Diane, an absolute pleasure as always. A heads up for our very next in the product chat series. If you're looking for those, the next one will be Tuesday, August 11th, 1:30 p.m. We'll be joined by Mark Limaker. He is the founder and CEO of Innovus, and the topic will be competitive intelligence for the new normal. First of all, we just have to get used to hearing the phrase, the new normal, because it's going to be the new normal all the time. And then, of course, if you are anxious to ask some more questions, join us every Friday here for the Ask Me Anything series with a Pragmatic Institute instructor. Happens every Friday, 1:30 p.m. And in the meantime, everyone be safe, stay healthy, have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you next time. Bye, gang.
Pleasure seeing everybody. Have a great weekend.